Hey everybody, I'm Greg Soul, and this is Whyami, a podcast where I talk to interesting people and try and trace a path to where they find themselves today. So my guest this go around is Anton Mitchell. This dude is a teacher through and through who takes pride in his craft and perhaps even more pride in learning something every day. His students, however, aren't at school. Rather, you will meet him as a tour guide at the one and only Mob Museum in sunny Las Vegas. Not only is he about to make you look at the mob in a way you never expected, but he's going to challenge you to say no to the money. I think I might have, but I'm not quite sure. Maybe he made me an offer I couldn't refuse. That's a good one. I'm gonna leave that in there. If you head out to Vegas and meet my guy, tell him Greg sent you. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this conversation with Anton. Anton, thank you for joining me on the Whyami podcast today.
Greg, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Feels like we just did this. Deja vu. No.
I know.
So I had the absolute delight to meet you just a few weeks ago as a local Vegas resident there. But there's obviously more layers to you. As I've just found out in the fancy restaurant, there's always some kind of pairing with you. It's always something normal and then something unexpected, which I absolutely love, man. So when I bring people here, the one question I always ask, and it's probably my favorite question in the world, man, is who are you?
Wolf. Wow.
That's heavy. It's
question.
heavy. But it's only as heavy
heavy
as you want it to be. So you tell me.
I know. Who am I? Let's see. I'm an educator at the Mob Museum. Family man to a degree. I'm living life at the age of 51, 52, somewhere in there. Yeah. You get old, you start losing numbers.
Yeah. It's kind of, just the general area.
Yeah.
That's what we're shooting for.
Yeah, exactly. And seeking to be an entrepreneur at some point.
Entrepreneur. I love it. So, educator at the Mob Museum. This is how I found you. My wife and I were celebrating one of our anniversaries out there, and I love museums. I love learning. I love turns out. I love little factoids, and you had no shortage of those when we met you. So we happened to walk up and hear this interesting guy with this amazing voice, obviously made for this kind of format, telling some people about dice, and we just sat there. And I think I ended up eating like 15 minutes of your time just talking to you about stuff. So let me know, how'd you end up as an educator at the Mob Museum? I also like to say educator because I like to teach myself.
Yeah, it was a weird concept. So Vegas, I started at the Mob Museum through a temp agency, and never did white collar, I guess. I was a construction worker, so it was weird, switching this to. I cooked before, and I had a little interesting dynamic. To give you a little background. So growing up, my mom made us take all the home ec classes. It was boys. Now, having to take sewing, cooking, all this, I was the only boy in some of the classes with all girls. So one, it used to freak me out that, like, why am I the only boy in here with all these girls? And why am I learning how to sew and cook and all this stuff? But by the time I got to high school, got good at it and got decent. Of course, more boys got into these different programs and things like that, but then seeing the opportunities of actually being a cook, kind of just grew my mind into other things of like how you connect, and layers, as you say. I started connecting things like, okay, it's survival, but also look what else you can do. It's not just a woman's world of doing this, not just a man's world of doing that to a degree. But from there, the dynamics of just warehouse construction work is what my basics were. And going to the Mob Museum was so unique of saying, what am I going to do here? Public speaking, and on the construction site, we don't use the same language that we do in museums. So it was a unique dynamic when I first got there. 2012 was my initial starting point, and the opening of the museum, by the way. So being in this field was kind of new to me, and I didn't understand where it was going to take me at all. But it was an interest of meeting mobsters that kind of put me in place there, because there was a little controversy in the news of opening up the museum. dedicated to the mob. And, being from Texas, we don't hear about mobsters.
No,
We hear
no,
about
never.
cartel and gangsters and other stuff like that. But New York mobsters are like, yeah, it's the East Coast thing, and you're not gonna make it over here, type of deal. And it was kind of fascinating in the beginning. I made a comment in our orientation. It was, it was a group of people, no one knew each other too much, or some knew each other, but some didn't. And I made a comment as I was talking to a guy, what is the mob and do they exist? And it must have ruffled this other guy's feathers so bad that he turns around out of his conversation and goes, who said that? And I'm like, oh, wow. Like, did I say something wrong? And then I even stopped, like, maybe someone else said something that we didn't hear, And he goes, who said that? Who said something about the mob? And I go, I did. And he goes, where are you from? I'm like, this is weird. I tell him, I'm from Texas originally. He goes, you're going to figure it out. Just a moment. I'm like, all right, we'll see how this goes. And he has kind of a East Coast accent. So I'm like, I guess, how these guys are. So let's find out what's going to happen here. Well, Oscar Goodman, the former mayor of Las Vegas, who I kind of seen on news but didn't really pay attention to, walks in. And he's giving us a kind of breakdown of what he's gathered and put together. Artifacts of organized crime members, memorabilia from law enforcement. But it was who's going to come in the building and help us learn this that really fascinated. It was former prosecutors, former family members of the mob, actual mobsters themselves that had maybe turned turncoat. So it was like, wait a minute, you mean we're about to learn from the individuals that were a part of all this stuff? And the curator of the building, Kathleen Berry, I have to give her a shout out. I got to work with her on several occasions and learn so much from her. But it was so interesting to like go home, watch The Godfather again, watch the movie Casino, but go to work and be like, you were part of that. You were part of this. You did this. You're telling me this. And it was like, whoa, the reality versus the movies just like so changed my whole thing that I went and re-enrolled in college, took communication, learned sign language to more be a part of this world of communications, because I felt that if you're going to talk about it, you got to talk about it in the correct light. There's no slang, there's no gangster, there's no official, but you want to be able to give it a fair shot of what it was, because I got to hear from the daughters of mobsters, which I thought was quite unique. The prosecutors and their take on some of the things, the mobsters themselves and why they were involved, and just law enforcement going after these guys on different levels. But then the everyday citizens that came in. You grew up in the neighborhood with these guys. You knew the power that they existed. Some were connected in small ways. Some tried to stay away altogether. But the fear of like, when we first opened up, to say mafia out loud was like it was in that beginning. It rang bells. And some people would like really just shut down in some ways. And it was fascinating. It was like, wow, this still goes on to this day. This power. It was almost like the cartel saying like we're in Mexico or something. And it was like, wow. But as the pandemic came, we lost a lot of our boomers at that age. These are the guys that were around still related to them. So now the mystique of what the mob is in the museum is a different twist. That when I ask, well, this guy? No. This guy? No. Bugsy Siegel's name doesn't ring bells like it used to. Lucky Luciano isn't the same Lucky Luciano. It's a rapper. It's Murder Inc. It's a recording label. So they don't attach it to what the true meaning of these were hit squads, were the actual gangsters. These were actual guys that pulled strings connected to politicians and lawyers. So the fascination of that history just, I don't know, it impacts me so much. It's crazy.
Yeah. You talking about that, the fact that you come from a very blue collar background, right? Like doing construction, you're not necessarily trying to convey complex concepts to people, right? Or really get all this interesting information over to people. But it sounds like you got in there, you really found maybe your calling. The fact that you went back to college to really hone your craft, to me, it says, like I wrote down, you're trying to honor the truth or honor the history in such a way that like you're dedicated to it.
Yeah.
And that's like, at somebody like you went back in like your 40s because this is like so important to you. That's like something I haven't heard many people say before.
Right. And it's the uniqueness that it's not, when you say mafia, you say, okay, Italian. But when you start digging into this history of the layers of it, It's Black, it's white, it's Latino, it's Asian, it's Jewish, it's Irish, it's whatever you want to be, wherever you're from. It's global. So it's international. So it's not one, and it's funny because I used to be kind of uncomfortable being African American, talking to Italians and Jewish and all these other races about their history to a degree. But when you dig into the history, we're all a part of it. And it's like, what role did you play here? So bringing all these elements to life, you also see the breakdowns of some of the racial issues that took place. But also you see how people of color made strides even in the hardest times and worked together with these other individuals that were supposed to be so racist and dominant at the same time as well. So I think our history is so layered, and we cast so much light on the dark side of it. And sometimes that we don't look at the positives that the dark side brought out of it, you know, and the unique way that it comes together. Some people see the mob as criminals. Some people see them as heroes, but we don't look at gangsters in that format. We don't look at the cartel in that format, you know, Yakuza, the triads, criminal underworlds. There's always somebody that supports them. That's a normal individual, you can say, in society, but why do they support them? For what reason? I live in a neighborhood, so I don't have to worry about locking doors and windows. I receive proceeds that fall off the back of the truck. What is your connection that sometimes you kind of turn a blind eye to the negative side of what these guys do? And it transcends all the way into government, law enforcement, is how the mob was able to manipulate and have prosecutors working for them, judges on their payrolls. But you knew what these guys were capable of doing and what they were doing. But you still took money and set laws in place, release guys from prison. So, yeah.
And it's interesting. Something you're saying there really like kind of touched something in my brain is that, you know, people say there's two sides to every story. I think there's a lot of sides to every story.
There are a lot of sides. There's more than two sides.
Yeah. And what you're talking about is like, it's not just the bad, like you just focus on the bad, but there's so much that surrounds that, right? Like there was an environment that allowed this thing to exist. And sometimes, like you said, there was, cause I know before, and I'm not exactly sure where, but there were parts of the country where specific race or ethnicity was being attacked, and they had to kind of band together to start protecting themselves, right? And those were kind of some of the origins. And so it's not all born out of like, hey, I just need to get one over on somebody else. It was protection and family and community. And like you said, some people saw it as hero. They would take care of people in the community.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you all have those layers of every bad guy has somebody that loves him. And it's crazy. You go, why do you love this guy? And they tell you something. You're like, so what? And it's like, but that's the same thing that you want out of your mom, your dad, your brothers, your sisters too, or wherever you find that comfort in as well. They just don't have the bad element, or maybe they do have a bad element. We just haven't seen it. You know, it's the sides of it. How do you balance it?
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's cool that you can be very objective about it and look at it kind of fair and balanced. I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with today, it seems like, or maybe it's just really popular to like super voice your opinion in opposition to something today. But
well, it's society. It's all about choose a side. And it's like, well, how can I choose a side? I got white friends, I got black friends, I got Mexican friends. What side am I choosing? Yes, you can stand for yourself, but now okay, I don't care about you. You or you. So whose views are more important now?
Yeah.
I eat hamburgers, I eat hot dogs, I eat Mexican food. That everyone eats every other culture's food, and for some reason most cultures love someone other culture's food.
Oh yeah. There's something about it that just like hits your taste buds just right. Or like for me, like there's been transformative moments through food. I start my thing with food, right? Because it's like it's such a unifying aspect. But there's been parts of my life where I've eaten a food and I'm like, oh well, I guess I'm a different person now. I love this thing. Yeah, it's so weird how that can work.
Yeah.
But yeah, like for me, I think I gravitate towards kindness and love. Like I don't care what you look like, what you believe. If you're kind to other people, you're kind to me, and you know, you just try and be good and do good in the world. Like you're cool with me. Like I have zero problems. But yeah, you're right. I never really thought about it. People want to pick sides, and as soon as they have a side, well then everybody else is an other, right? They're them. They get lumped together.
Yeah, you isolate you, and it's like, why are you isolating each other? It's like we're all together, all have the same elements. It's like, come on.
Yeah. There's like, I don't like it when people say, big grouping words like criminal or immigrant, right? Because you dehumanize those people. It's like you said, there's somebody who loves that person.
Yeah. And look what you just did. You just threw this whole group into this. Now it's interesting when you say like immigrant. When you say immigrant now, most people in their minds, what pops into your head, Latino, Mexican, anything of that origin is what is an immigrant. But in reality, anyone that comes from out of the foreign countries are immigrants, right? But if you say ICE and who they're targeting, we're not hearing about the Asian community. We're not hearing Russians. We're not hearing English people or Australians that are in the country illegally. All you're hearing is about southern border. And it's like, wow, are there any Canadians that are coming across the border? There are criminals that are hiding in America.
Yeah.
it's like, come on, what is the impact? I mean, people flee countries to go hide in other countries all the time, but what is that affecting? What is going on? And what about some of the farm workers that are over here from the Philippines and things like that are being held here because their passports and visas are taken by the guys they're working for?
Yeah.
It's like there's layers to human trafficking that you're not even looking at, but all these other ones are immigrants who only focus on one race all of a sudden.
Yeah. You know, and you were in construction, like that industry's a good portion of it's based on immigrant labor, people coming over here to work hard.
Well, you know what's funny? When I first got involved with construction, it was more white, and being predominantly white, it was also a pride of saying, almost to a racial tone, but also was an understanding that I had to get to learn. Learn something every day was something that we went to work with. Buy a tool every day was something that we went to work with as well. Whether you bought a pencil to write, a measuring tape, a chalk line, whatever it was, something that cost as simple as a nickel or as much as $1,000 was something to help you grow each day in learning. But I noticed with some of the white workers that were there, when some of the migrants, other cultures were coming in, it was I'm not going to teach you this trade. I'm not going to teach you this trick of getting this job done. So your work is always going to be just a little bit subpar to what I do. And it was like, And then there was a father-son duo that the father tried to teach his son everything that he knew. And the father was renowned in his work and everyone praised him for his work. But the son just took it as like, I'm good because my dad is good. And I learned from my dad, but his work was never as good and his work habits weren't as good. And you've seen the dynamics of this. And me coming in, I just learned to pick from everybody. Let me take this, let me take this, let me take this, because I became the patch guy. I had to go back and repair everyone's work. And it was an interesting thing that my boss would tell me what went wrong and tell me who did the job. And then you're going to go work with them. And I had to watch their things. And when I seen them going to make a mistake or do something they did before, I was there to correct them and do the correct procedures that should go on, or if they were skipping steps or things like that. So that's what got me to learning from all the different guys, tricks of the trade. So it was like a jack of all trades within the tile. So it was interesting of picking up all these things and motives of it. But I had to like shadow and stand behind and look over shoulders to learn some of the things because some guys weren't willing. But then we had a group of Bosnians come in and start working with us. And anything that I didn't know, these guys would come and tell me, come over. Let me show you. Let me just do this. And we worked together to learn. And it was like, and they would say, because it was the competition of whose work was better. And the Bosnians say, we share our skills. Our work is always going to be better than those that work against us. And it was like, we're supposed to be union here. But even within the union, it was that little tidbits that you could tell that just in your workmanship. It was like, wow. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. I love the idea of learn something every day. So something I just heard there is you've been teaching people for a really long time. So this progression of yours into the Mob Museum and then further teaching people, this wasn't something new. You've been doing this for a minute, but it makes me wonder, what do you feel like is more important? The part where you're learning stuff, because you said learn something every day, or the part where you're teaching it, you're kind of giving it back?
Oh, I don't think you can. There's a yin and yang to it, because some days you are the mentor and someone's looking up to you in some way, whether you know it or don't know it. But then some days you need to step back from being the mentor and learn from someone, whether they're higher, lower, or on the same level as you. Is something that I've learned to kind of humble myself into, because there's always a pride of saying, I'm the teacher, I know more than you. And as students walk through the door, guess what? 1, 2, 3, or all those students have a trick that you don't know about. And through the course of that year of teaching, boom, you're going to learn that this kid did this. And you're like, oh my God, I never expected that. But you just learned something from that kid, right? Good or bad. And I think those elements exist in all levels. So it's like, you can't say one is better than the other. I think it's a good thing to maybe try and do both each day. Learn something today, but also teach something today.
Yeah, I love that. Like, my thinking is, if you're going to teach something, you have to know it. You have to know it all the way through and through.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And I've noticed sometimes
to know it means you have to learn it.
100%. If I'm going to teach something, I'll actually end up learning even more than I knew before, because I'm preparing myself, because like I want to do as good a job as I can and honor my opportunity to help somebody else do it. You know, I had a guy I really respect who told me one time, and this was a revelation to me, because I always felt like I had to be so smart. He said, if I'm the smartest guy in the room, I have nothing to learn. He's like, so I try and surround myself with as many intelligent people as I can. And it's so like true. That like has completely switched my brain, because now, instead of maybe being quiet and not asking the question, I'll ask the dumb question. I don't care. Like, if this is an opportunity for me to learn, I'm here, and I'm going to get everything out of this person I can.
Yeah, that's me. I'm always one that's going to ask the question. I'm almost like the daredevil to a degree. It's like, who wants to go first? And like, crash first, dummy, right here. I'll go first. Let's see what happens. It's like, okay, but also I'm learning from it. So it's like, let's see, let's experience. But also I think it's an opportunity that if you do want to set the bar of saying, let's go here, let's go there, then you have to be the first one to do it, or be wanting to do the first one. Because when you sit back and like let everybody do it, and you're like, I'm waiting to see what everybody does, and I'm going to do it the best. It's like, all right, you're going to sit back and watch everybody else do it. But guess what? When someone nails it, then you're like, oh shit, look where that bar is set. You have to try and reach, because you didn't think they're going to all mess up. And I'm going to just hey, no, it may not be that easy, And also sometimes go to intimidation if everybody's not making it, like, dang, everybody failed. Oh shit, now what's going to happen is my turn. And now all eyes are on me. Yeah, always going to be at you at some point in time. It's like, let's get it over with. Let's go.
Yeah. I'm very much I want to go first kind of guy too. Not to necessarily get it out of the way, but like let's go. Like I don't want to sit around. Yeah. So you said you're not afraid to ask the question. That also makes me think, like, coming from your background where you've done so much hands-on stuff, I'm assuming you're also like, hey, I'll be the first one to try this thing.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, if I have knowledge of it, if it's something I don't know, then I'm like, wait. Give me some more. Give all the parameters around it. Then I can, all right, make a better judgment of it. But I love it.
That's cool. I think, like to your point, I think a lot of people are afraid to fail, right? They feel like failure is final. Like I'm going to be dead if I fail at this thing, which is never the case, right?
What's funny about that too? And it took me a lot of years to realize, and I guess, as they say, with age, wisdom comes. But every day you have a problem, right? Problems never go away. But if you go back 10 years and you go, what the hell was that? I was really, really stressed out about that day 10 years ago. And you go, can't fucking even think of what it was. And then maybe you do remember, I was in bankruptcy. I was going through divorce. But you're like, that was 10 years ago now. And I haven't thought about it. And I'm still here.
Yeah.
They don't change. They're big, they're small, they're ugly. Problems are there, but we get through them one way or another, So it's like, yeah, don't be afraid to fail is what I would tell everybody as well. I mean, I know it's repeated over, and when you're in it, it's hard. It is. That's the baddest thing, I think, is some people aren't mentally prepared to handle a lot of their issues or problems, or just the way that we attack our problems is, it's so just passed along of, go read a book, go talk to this person, go do this. Sometimes it's not that easy with everyone. And you need to find what is your way of getting out of their slum or problem fixing, elements. Because some are unique. Go play basketball, play a game of chess, do something outside the box, put on some instrumental with no words and add words into it as the music plays in your own head of something delightful, like find something else, change it.
Man, you are very zen. You're like a monk. I love it.
Ah.
Like a shaman, wise man over here. I love it. Talking about like learning and teaching and stuff like that, you were talking about how you've interfaced with a lot of interesting people that you never anticipated probably running into in your life. And especially at like the Mob Museum and stuff like that, talking to some of these people that we've already, talked about labels, right? Like criminal or mobster.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, like, what were your expectations going in and what were your impressions of these people? Because I'm assuming they became just people to you at the end.
Yeah, it's funny. I've never been like a starstruck type of person.
Yeah, me neither.
But with the gangsters coming in, it was a different element. Not saying that I was like, ooh, but it was like who are you? Let me find out who this mystery person is that like you walk into a room and you shut this room down. You have the power to do such. You don't own anything in here. Usually it's the business owner that you're worried about that comes in. It's like, he owns the place. These are guys that just walked in. It's like, no, I don't own this place, but guess what? I can change your life with the snap of a finger. And it was like, how did you get so much power?
That's wild.
Or you're the kid of these individuals. And it was like, do you take advantage of this? Like, do you really like glorify it? Do you relish it? And like, my daddy's going to get you. Like, oh shit. Like, what do you want? Everything's on me. It was like, but when I started meeting them, it was more of a humbling experience. Like, I won't name drop specifically, but the daughter of a very prominent mobster. And this guy, it's amazing that he flies underneath the radar. So many individuals, and only the few I would say that are really into the history of organized crime, to a really deep level, even know this guy and who he was and existed. But he was always around money, from moving alcohol in from Canada to being a part of Cleveland, to coming to Las Vegas and changing the dynamics there. But his daughter was one of the first people I met in the museum. And I met her like kind of like me and you when we met at the museum. I was on the second floor, but I was doing a courtroom presentation instead. And lady comes along and she just kind of stands there a little bit, and guests are going through and she's just hanging out. So I ask her, how you like the place? And she kind of shows her shoulders like, And I'm like, whoa, all right. That's kind of nonchalant. And at this time, I'm still like in my infancy stage of knowing mob and learning this stuff. Cause we're like, literally, we're moving signs. That's what we're telling people is like, go this way, go that way. If you would have asked me 13 years ago if you would have been in the museum that day of anything about the mob, I would have told you like, man, you got to read the wall. I can't tell you this stuff. You got to read this wall or something. But the woman turns to me after a moment and she goes, I don't mean to like blow this off. She goes, but my dad is in here. And when she said that, I kind of thought like, oh, your dad's walking around in here like this. And she goes, no, my dad, he's a part of all this. And I'm like, oh, now still being infant at this, I'm thinking Bugsy Siegel, Meyer Lansky, Lucky Luciano, Al Capone, these names. And it's none of these characters that you would think. It's like, oh. And that was just the first interaction with her. But she was just so humbled and said that. Well, a few weeks later, she's in the building again. We're on another floor, and I'm standing next to her dad's case. And she goes, that's my dad in the case right there. Have you read about him yet? And I turn and I look at it, and I go, huh, that's interesting. Dog tags, military, your dad. What the heck? So I read up on him. And of course, she's back again because our first year open, a lot of these people were involved with our development. So they were around us a lot, and we had a lot of one-on-ones with them. Is why I was making so much easy contact with her like this. And like I said, she wasn't name dropping. She wasn't being snob or anything. She was just real humble and say stuff. But during our class, she would just like come by me and tell me, read this one or do this. Like so hints of, if you want to know who I am, check out who my dad is, like this. And as I started digging into her dad, I had a very interesting interaction one night as I was doing a closing round. A gentleman comes in, he was a boomer, and he's coming through the building and he stumbles across a picture of her dad. And he stops and he goes, "Do you know who this is?" I go, "Yeah, it's so and so." He goes, "I was his podiatrist." And I'm like, "Wow." Okay. Like, he goes, "But this guy was so humble in Las Vegas." He goes, he would go here, he would do this, he would do all these other things. And I'm like, all right, okay, all right. He always paid cash. He goes, one day, him and the family, they stopped by and, we had to do some things. And it was just $5, $5 a bill. He didn't have any money on him. He goes, wait, he walked across the street to the bank, got money out, came back and paid him and, got the receipt. And then he goes, he always paid his bills. He was always a humble guy. He was never this, everyone knew who he was and the power he was, but he never exemplified that when he went out. It was like he was a family man around town. And I'm like, wow. So as I started digging into this guy, I realized he did a lot of things to create what Vegas is today. UNLV, Sunrise Hospital, shopping centers, housing developments. It was like, wow. But he also separated his family that they actually lived in Mexico. They would come here to visit, but he didn't want them to grow up with the stigma of the mob attached to them. And the daughter went to boarding schools over in Europe and things like that. And it was like, woman, you're such a humble woman to have such a powerful dad. And his influences are organized crime, but he was such a guy that he looked out for the community. And it was like, wow. And he wasn't the guy that said, I'm looking out for you and you got to pay me back and you owe me. No, I'm doing this to help us become a city, be a part of what we are, and to have just a good building foundation. It was like, whoa, that really blew me away to think that you could be a bad guy, but look what you can do with all this power. And even good guys now look at you as like, yeah, you're the most powerful gangster, but I don't see you as a gangster. I see you as a guy that can help me open doors, pull strings, finance, things like that. So it was so interesting. And it didn't translate into the family of being, we're this mob guys and you better watch out, type of deal. They were just so humble and really just wanted to be out of this light, out of the no spotlight to it. But to see dynamics of others come in and be like, you know who I am? From New York. I'm da-da-da-da. It's like, whoa, you walk around really cocky guy. Like, I don't think I would want to be that cocky like that, because you would figure like someone's going to bump you off sooner or later, and oh, that's why you travel with bodyguards, because someone is going to try and bump you off sooner or later with this degree. And the judges that come in are like, oh, they're amazing. To hear law at that level, like most people only see a judge in front of one part, but to walk around and hear these guys talking freely about the cases that they handle, the evidence that goes into it and stuff like that. It's just, I don't know, it's so fascinating to hear the inner workings behind the scenes. One big moment for me, Secret Service of JFK. I was around some of the retired guys, but they come to life in that building like, I don't know. I mean, they were all older, of course, but it's like you remember, I show you a picture of your childhood and you remember that day. You talk about it like you were there that day. You remember it so much. And these guys come to life and it was like, wow, this is crazy to think that you guys are actually a part of these moments. And I got to be a part of talking to you guys. Robert Blakey, he wrote the RICO Act. Crazy, think like, sheesh. I got to walk around and do a tour with you, former CIA agent, undercover for 30 years. That's one of the guys that I met. And director of the Spy Museum. Actually wrote me a letter commending me on the tour. And that one blew me away because I'm like, wait a minute. How are you coming me on a tour that all this? Like, sheesh, I thought, was that a test or something, but it really made me show that my work was paying off of studying this stuff and also being a fair balance of not throwing shade on one side or the other, but also talking about the inadequacies. Law enforcement is so misunderstood on so many different levels. If you understand how law enforcement evolved from cowboys, sheriffs, marshals, bounty hunters, wanted dead or alive, into what we have today. That's a whole nother evolution that people don't even touch on. Think about it. Me or you could be wanted dead or alive back in the 1800s. Anyone comes and shoots one of us and just drags our body back in, and they collect a bounty for it. But how many mistaken identities were there back then? Not the right guy to kill. Yeah. Oh, did you get prosecuted for murder? Also deputized. Heck, we're both in Texas and I ride to Houston and need some help. Hey, you're going to be my deputy for the day and let's go.
That's wild.
And also we're just out hunting bad guys, It's like, and now you need a badge, you need schooling, you need training. And is it as effective as it was back then? Who knows? It's like these dynamics people don't think about. And then you throw the element of bad guys who've always been around. They've always had shootouts with law enforcement. It's always been this good versus bad element of it. But you didn't hear about cowboy sheriffs working for gangsters back in those days. Outlaws. Where did that come about? Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It's crazy, this history.
Yeah. It's fascinating and nuanced.
Yeah.
Something you touched on was really interesting to me when you were talking about the mobster's daughter walking through there. Like in my head, I was wondering, what would it feel like to be that person? And then you talked about like the Secret Service agents, how they come alive. Like it's I don't know, maybe energizing in a way to like connect them back to this history and want to be able to share that. Just like the juxtaposition of those two personalities walking in there, it must feel like, can you imagine going into a museum and then half of it's about you and your family? Like that would be so bizarre.
Yeah. That's the fascinating thing about it. It's like, okay, I had a guest come in, and this is a VIP tour I was doing, and one was a billionaire, and she brought some associates with her. And their backgrounds were very unique because you've seen the 100-year Made Men wall that we have there. There's a variety of individuals from East Coast, West Coast, Black, white, men, women, Latino, African American on this wall. So these guys, they fan out and they're looking at the wall. It's about a group of maybe 6 or 7. And as they're looking at the wall, I start seeing their mouths open up like, and one woman, she goes and she looks at Griselda Blanco, the godmother of cocaine. And she goes, I was in with her. And when she said that, the little group huddled. I was excluded outside the group, but it was like a closed door meeting all of a sudden about this one picture on the wall. And I was like, I don't know who you are, who you're connected to, but wow, that must be pretty impactful that everyone started whispering some things like immediately right there. And I was like, wow. And there were a few pictures that, a few little small groups opened. And then one, I'll do it only because he's in the news right now. P. Diddy's dad was connected to one of the guys on the wall as well. They were like, oh yeah, his dad worked with Bumpy or Lucas or one of the guys up there like that. And I was like, oh wow, you guys know some things here. Like, I was like, I've never heard that before. Like, all right, it's pretty cool. So that was a real interesting groups I get to go through the building with, and the conversations that we have are so unique but powerful. And it's like I said, it's fascinating that it's not you're a killer, you're a murderer. This that's coming out every 5 minutes. It's like, oh, they did this, and wow, he was connected to this, and wow, he controlled that. And you kind of see the dynamics of how we live our lives in everyday society come to play out to a degree. So that's what's like, I don't know. It's I don't even know what the energy is. It's just such an energy that comes to life in those tours. I love them.
Yeah. But it's not surprising. Like you seem kind of surprised by the conversations you have. You're extremely disarming. I see why people want to have like these very like maybe divulge information that they wouldn't typically. Like I feel suddenly the need to give you my social security number and my PIN code. No, but I get it. So like when you were talking about how that fella committed you on your tour, it's because it's not just one aspect. It's all the layers. Your obvious commitment to the information, the history, your love for it, and then obviously you've been honing yourself to deliver information to people, and and again, you're so disarming. like you're very charming and laid back and super easy to talk to. And it's obvious that you like people. And I see why you like connect so well in this way. Like it feels like so many interesting things have come together just right for you to be like the perfect weapon for this thing.
Yeah, and that's what's like fascinating to me. Like I said, from construction to this is like complete 180, 360 even, but it's like, what the hell? But it's like, yeah, not knowing who I'm walking into, what conversations are going to materialize each day. And it's funny because everyone goes, you know so much. I'm like, I've been here longer than you guys. Not that I know so much. I've just been here longer than you guys. So I've had a lot more time to absorb this information. But it's like, this information doesn't stop. It's like, you can read a book and watch the documentary, but then you meet the individual and it's like, whoa, let me go back and read this book again. Let me go back and watch that again. But I still need to go back and analyze that conversation that we had, which was so much more rich with information or details about what went on. And it's so fascinating. It's like, I met a photographer that took one of the most captivating pictures of a mobster killed. And just in the building one day, and he comes in, and it's funny because people just come to me like, I don't know, it's
moth to the flame.
Weird. Yeah, it's a weird attraction. We're in a murder room of bodies, and the guy goes, I took that picture right there. And I'm like, oh, like, okay. He goes, oh, I'm the photographer. He like told me his credentials, a newspaper guy from New York. And I'm like, oh, wow. I said, well, how did it happen? He goes, crime scene. It's all cordoned off. Can't nobody get back there. So I'm like, so how'd you get the picture then? So now I'm thinking like, did you really take the picture? And he goes, next door, we ran up the fire escape. We leaned over. We started snapping pictures. He goes, if you look, the tarp's being laid over the body right there. And I looked down, I'm like, I looked at the picture like all the time and just walked past it. But then when I stopped and really analyzed the picture and then watched the documentary about it, it was like, holy cow. Wow. He goes, yeah, it was the first one to get this shot right there. So it was like, he goes, I would see the gangsters all over and take pictures of them in cafes and, stuff like that. And they would threaten me and tell me, rip this up or, smash my camera and destroy the film. And it was like, never think about the guys who are like trying to report this stuff in their lives and the dynamics of it, so it was another avenue of what all this world that I'm now talking about it consists of. That's why I think it's so unique that it involves so many areas, so many levels that, I don't know, it's just endless knowledge of learning.
Yeah. So you mentioned something there that it was a room that didn't super appeal to me that I moved through pretty fast. Was that room?
Yeah, a lot of people do. That room I've seen that room have the biggest effect on so many people in there because I've seen grown men come out in tears. I've seen women come out giggling and laughing. I've heard older women come out and go into that reminisce phase of uncles or grandpas and things like that may have been associated with some things there. I've met two victims who one lost her husband that was in our room. The other one, his uncle was a part of the John Gotti, the Paul Castellano murder thing. The hitman had fired into the crowd as well to kind of cause more of a distraction when the shooting took place, and his uncle was a victim. And at a young age, he wondered why the family didn't want money from the mob to pay for the hospital bills. And the family were like, real insistent on saying, nope, we'll take care of our own. We don't want to have to pay back any favors. We're not part of this. We saw nothing. And it was just like, boom. And it was like, wow, it's crazy how deep this goes, but also the fear factor side of it is like, I've seen some real fearful moments without weapons, guns, anything being drawn on someone in that building just from the history. And it's like, wow, that's a deep impact when you see people affected by it. So like my day in there is a little bit more unique, I say, to some of my coworkers, me being there so long and my interactions, because I see people's body language. So I'm seeing when they're like in distress from some of the stuff that we're highlighting in there versus those that are just like glazed over. It's nothing. I grew up in the hood. This is what I love type of deal. And then those that are truly fascinated by it, that I didn't know how deep this was, or I knew some of the connections, but now I'm seeing more connections or understanding. Heck, I came to Vegas in the 50s and 60s, 70s and 80s, and I never knew the mob was here the whole time. Like, yeah, you're in gangster casinos this whole time and mobster money flowing around this place, and you were in the center of all of it. And they're like, never knew. Like, yes, that's crazy.
Yeah. I was reading some stuff about how when a lot of people, they go back into a memory, especially a powerful one, they will feel those same feelings. It becomes present. Like that moment comes back to them, becomes present. They feel that thing. But it made me wonder, you go through all of this stuff so much, right? So there's, like you said, there's good, there's bad, there's absolutely ugly associated with all of it. Do you feel like it kind of desensitizes you to some of the bad parts? Like it just becomes part of the tour for you?
No, because I always want to pay attention to how I highlight some items in there. Even when I'm in with the gangsters, I never over glorify anything just to make them feel like, oh, you're right. Yeah, this is this, or that was cool, or anything like that. Sometimes I'll even bring in something to make them even think about it. Like, yeah, this and this, but what would you do if you had this in the shower? You had that decision to make. And some were like, oh, wow. If I was in those shoes and knowing the outcome that comes in, some were like, I wouldn't want to be like that. It's like, yeah, it's the reality of it, Yeah, and everyone has that one of those, I wouldn't want to end up like this,
for sure.
It's like
People
there's
say
no retirement.
Humans are capable of almost anything given the right circumstances, right? So
yeah,
who's to say you wouldn't have operated similarly in the same spot?
Yeah, exactly.
It's easy to judge people from a distance, right? It's much harder to say, like, I grew up in this, because it's not even just like being in this moment, right? You have to grow up where they grow up. You have to go through all the things that they went through to like land where they are to make this decision. Yeah. I think that's something we forget. It's like you look at somebody who did something, you're like, how in the world could they ever make that decision? Well, it's like, if you could read the story of their life, you'd see why they made this decision. Something brought them here.
Yeah. Well, like they say, if you can walk in their shoes, as they say, of course, you never want to put yourself in their shoes, though, because you go, I would never do that. Well, you haven't put yourself in their shoes either. You haven't had to go through their dilemmas and their struggles. And maybe you might have seen something differently that may have changed something. But if you had just their mindset and their opportunities they had, maybe you took the same path, One that I use, and it's funny, we have the 100 Years of Rackets in our chalkboard room. And I love bringing my guests there and saying, look at this. Anything that you can think of that makes money, what would you be a part of? Find something that you would say, that's my May. I'm making money there. And is it legal or is it illegal? And they stop and they go, oh, wow. And some are purposely trying to find something legal to get involved in, where others are like, I made money. I'll take that. I'll take this, So it's like, yeah. And it's like, well, look at what your choices are. We're here for money, right? And look what you're doing for this money. And they're like, oh, yeah. And look who you're going to be connected to now because of this money. Whether you're good or bad, you still can have an evil entity connected. And they're like, wow. I have one. I'll present this one to you. So remember the tomato sauce cans?
Yeah.
$1.6 billion was made by bringing drugs into the country by using tomato sauce cans imported into pizza parlors. Now, that money had to be laundered, right? So I talked to a DA agent who was part of the undercover task force for that, Frank Pasea. Now, working undercover, they had to launder the money. So he goes, investment brokers is who they dealt with. $1 million a day is going to come to you. Off that $1 million, 100,000 is yours off the top. Rest of that money, I want you to invest it. I don't care if it's pink toenail polish for pigs. I don't care if it's flying sauce or whipped cream. Whatever you want to put that money involved in, it's there for 30 days. You write me a cashier's check, send it off to the Dominican Republic, and each day you're getting paid $100,000. Are you in or out?
Holy cow. I would say if I was in a much more desperate situation, that would be a harder decision.
Well, let me add one more round to this. This is the 70s and 80s at this point in time.
So $100,000 is like $400,000 or $500,000 now. That's wild. Make it like $400,000 a day. Also, keep in mind too, the person that's asking me this, the fact that I know what they're talking about, that they're asking me this, I don't know that I can say no. Like, is me saying no even an option now that they're presenting this, and like I could implicate them in some crime? Do I have the option to say no? Because it might not just be me; it might be my family too that pays for this. So.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
that's
so
pretty
as
hairy.
I say, it's all around. Now, when I present that to guests in the museum, if I have a crowd of 5, at least 2 are going to say yeah without even no hesitation. They're like,
no hesitation.
They're saying 2. The other 3 are pondering it. I may get 1 as a straight no way because they've already considered I can't get out. Yeah, the money's good, but guess what? I can never walk away with that much money. And what am I going to do with that much money over time? And when I started telling them, within a week, you got $500,000. What are you doing? And I said, for the most people right now, you don't even want to go to work no more. You got $500,000 in 1 week. You don't even want to work as an average citizen, but you have to go to work. And then they look at me like, oh yeah, yeah, I got all this money. I can't even go. No, you can't go party and spend or do none of that because you don't make that much money in reality. Yet you have this much money, and what are you doing with it? And it's accumulating so quickly on you. And then they go, that's difficult. Wow. Now I wouldn't do it. Like, why? Because I couldn't. Like, yeah. You have to change your whole lifestyle, your whole demeanor if you get involved with this. But the opportunity is there. You want to be rich. Yeah. But how are you going to live this life? How are you going to spend this money? Because now you're part of these guys. And guess what? That first check that you cash and you walk away with, you can't walk away anymore. You can't call out sick. Yeah.
Yeah. And you don't get to leave until they say you can leave, which probably means never. So
never. Yeah. Yeah. And you're sitting on this wad of cash that you got to keep hidden from your family and everyone else. Yeah, you can take care of people. Here's Christmas present. Here's birthdays. But for the most part, you got to be that low, even keel guy that goes to work and works at 95.
Yeah. I mean, you'd have to be in a really desperate place to be like, that's your best alternative.
Yeah.
That's wild. That's because I think that's the
it's
magic.
Because you can't have your cake and eat it too in that whole situation. And it's like, and it's such a wonderful opportunity to say, someone's gonna walk through the door and give me $100,000 every day, like every single day, dude. And you're like, I ain't gotta worry about mortgage. Kids go to college. I can drive whatever I want to drive. Yeah, you have money galore, but guess what? Your friends going to look at you like, where are you getting this money from all of a sudden? That's here's going to start looking at you where you getting this money from. And also, guess what? When you want to go party, you got to keep it, because you have to show up for your 9 to 5. And hey, this is not today's world where you can just go jump off. This is the 70s and 80s. So you're working for some major brokerage. You're not independent. You're not opening up going independent no time soon and just blowing up like that. But yeah, today you can maybe manipulate something.
To me, that's the magic about like that kind of experience. And I could have read everything on the walls and found all that interesting, but until somebody like you asked me that question, I don't leave my body. I don't really put myself in somebody else's place. And to me, that's like one of my favorite things to do in the world. But sometimes I get so stuck in my own head, like it's hard for me to like separate and go over there. And that's invaluable, man. I think that's amazing. Just like that gift you have to like do that you're like sitting there thinking about this kind of stuff and pulling people out of themselves. Like, that's so cool, man.
Yeah.
That's dope.
Actually.
Well, I'll tell you what, Anton, I could literally sit here and just keep talking with you. But I want to be respectful of your time. We're coming up close to the mark here, man. So again, thank you so much for your time and energy. And I always ask my guests if there's, and maybe it's a no, because I've had people say no, we're good. If there's anything you'd like people to connect with you with, like any social medias, anything you got coming up, any kind of way you'd want people to follow you, whatever it looks like, man. Is there any of that stuff?
Entrepreneurship, trying to get something going, Vegas touring. So if you stop by my museum, you can see me, take a tour. Eventually, hopefully I'll have my own tours. We can walk around Vegas and just chit chat, talk about some of the places that I've learned the Rat Pack hung out at, or mobster hits, or movie sites and things like that. You know, nice little casual tour. I want to have something that's more pocket friendly for the tourists that come to Vegas, believe it or not. I feel Vegas has become so buy this, buy this, buy this, buy this. And it was like, it used to be like, vacations used to be fun where you weren't worried about spending money. You went to have fun on vacation. Now vacations are about spend. And every little nook and cranny is like squeeze another dollar out of you. I want to have just a one stop, one pop. We go hang out, art walk, gambling tour, chill, no frills, and have fun, chill conversation type of thing.
Well, you know, it's funny. Vegas. I'm not the kind of person that buys a lot of stuff. Like I just like, that's not my thing. What I do spend my money on is experiences. And like if I could do a tour with you and get to like absorb some of your energy, dude, because you are just so fun to be around, like, and you show me around and we have a good time, dude, like that is an experience worth paying for. I don't know that your pocket friendly idea even comes into play. Like it is absolutely worth, you have great value in that respect, man. And when you get this thing rocking and rolling, I would love to do that.
I'll definitely hit you up and come back. Yeah, we'll do it. Cause like I said, I have fun. I like to just go hit the strip, walk around downtown. There's so much to see in Vegas outside the strip and things like that people don't understand and see. But yeah, just a normal day kicking it. When I go on vacation, I do vacation, but also I like this. What they doing in the neighborhood? Let's just walk to the corner store and just chill and buy a bag of chips and a soda and walk back out and just walk through the neighborhood, you know?
Yeah,
it's
like, take people down Fremont Street and you just talk to me about all of the history. Because I don't know, like
exactly.
I think the new casinos and stuff are cool. Like the Bellagio, it's beautiful. You walk in there, it's amazing to look at. The fountains.
But what was there before the Bellagio?
Exactly. You go down Fremont Street and there's something about the architecture, the artwork that just calls to me, like to that 1960s, that 1970s style. Like to me, it just, I've got like this romanticized idea of Vegas and it feels more like that. And I want somebody to tell me about that.
Well, you know, that's the funny thing that where's my construction like hits me hard with the building structures. Cause it's like, I still had a little bit of that generation that built things to last, you know, durable, had character to it. Because your name is on it. So the workers are the ones that made sure this building is going to be here forever. Nowadays, you got prefab. So it's like, well, you gave me something I just got to stick to a wall. So do I care about my name being attached to this either? I don't care. Boop, 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 boop. Did you work on that? I did that building and that building. You know, it's like, nah, have some character, have some features to it. You know, that's why I love our building. You know, it's neoclassic, built 1933. It's durable. It's sturdy. The floors are terrazzo. The marble bathrooms, the original doors of the elevator. It has character in it, you know. It's a building that has a life. It's not just look at the buildings. They're like, come on, these new buildings are you build a copy of the pyramid, but it's just a copy of the pyramid, and you see it during the day, and if it's not 110, you don't see it at all. So it's like, come on, like let's add some character, add some more flair to some stuff, you know?
Walking through there, I noticed the stairwells, like kind of like the marble sort of looking steps, and it reminded me of a building I used to work in from, I think it was built in like the 1920s, somewhere around there. Okay. And they used to have, it was a bank building, kind of like yours was sort of a post office / courthouse. But it was a gravel street outside. And so all these bankers would get like dirt and rocks stuck to their shoes. And so you could see the marble steps are like kind of bowed in the middle. I love that history. You just, you know what I mean? Like it's irreplaceable. You can't get that anywhere else.
It is. Yeah.
I dig it. Anton, I told you I would sit here and not talk to you. And what am I doing? I'm sitting here talking to you. So again, thank you.
I love it.
Let me hit stop on all this stuff.